And ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, we are situated here and we're ready to go. Having said that, we're actually going to have a number of folks who are going to be on. When I say number, I mean specifically two folks who are going to be on our show today, and they're going to provide some extremely important information. Time now, by the way, is 3:30 p.m., which is the starting time for TV Courtroom, hosted by yours truly, attorney Michael Cord, aka Michael X, aka the angriest black man in America. Now, that's my introduction, but in about 29 minutes, we're going to hear from two persons who are going to provide you with extremely important information. If you saw my social media post today, you know that the two persons are two of the most important persons dealing with the so-called criminal justice system here in Philadelphia. And by the way, people often call it the criminal justice system, but it's really not a criminal justice system. It's actually a classist punitive system. Let me repeat that. A classist punitive system. When I say classist, I mean it adversely affects people who are poor. That speaks for itself. And when I say punitive, it's not about helping people, it's not about rehabilitating people, it's not about getting folks on the right track. It's about punishing them. That's the system. So when I call it a classist punitive system, that's precisely what I mean. Far too often, people call it the criminal justice system, but there's no justice in this system. When I call it classist, think about it this way. Would you rather be a rich, guilty man on trial or a poor, innocent man on trial? Would you prefer to be a rich, guilty woman on trial or a poor, innocent woman on trial? Would you prefer to be anybody who's rich and guilty or poor and innocent? The fact that every reasonable person in America would prefer to be rich and guilty on trial as opposed to being poor and innocent on trial proves precisely what I'm saying. It's a classist punitive system. And I have to admit that part of the problem, not a whole lot. And by the way, this is an introduction to the guests we're going to have. I want to talk about them in just a second. But I just kind of want to warm things up because I started out using the terminology, the phraseology that most lawyers and most judges and most folks in the system use. They call it the criminal justice system. But I want to let folks know that, yeah, we recognize it as that based on what it's commonly called, but it's really not a criminal justice system. If it were, then everybody would be treated fairly, but everybody's not treated fairly. And that's why I said that it's better in America to be rich and guilty on trial than it is to be poor and innocent on trial. That's a frightening concept. And when I say that I'm part of the problem, lawyers are part of the problem. What I mean is this: for the most part, criminal defense attorneys are like band aids on a cancerous lesion. Yeah, we might cover up the sore so it doesn't look as bad. We might be able to get some peroxide or some medicine to put on it, but that's just cosmetic. It just covers it up. But the cancer is still there. The lesion might look a little better, but the underlying cancer is there. So when I go into court and I fight like I did today when the DA's office filed a motion, we lawyers call it a 404B motion, but you see behind me over my right shoulder is Brother Malcolm. And every time I start talking like a lawyer, Brother Malcolm whispers in my ear, hey, bro, make it plain. Everybody you're talking to is not a lawyer. They didn't have the benefit of going to a great school and getting into a great college and then going to a law school and passing the bar. Most black folks, most brown folks, many white folks don't have that benefit. So when you talk to the masses, don't use that highfalutin legal terminology. Break it down. As Brother Malcolm says, make it plain. So there was a 404B motion. What does that mean? It means that there's something in Pennsylvania called the Pennsylvania Rules of Evidence. And the Pennsylvania Rules of Evidence, they're basically like the rules of the game. And the game is the trial. And certain things can be done, certain things can't be done. The referee will call a foul on some things, referee will not call a foul on other things. And referee is basically the judge. So in this 404B motion, the DA wanted to bring in what we lawyers call prior bad acts. So if somebody is accused of a crime today, but they also were accused of something 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 5 months ago, the DA wants to bring that in. And you say, well, why should they be able to bring that in? That would make the jury think that if you're accused of this thing in court now, and you did something in the past similar, they'll figure that that's who you are. And you have a predisposition to be a bad guy. So what I did was I went into court, I argued, and I was able to argue and persuasively to the judge that this prior bad act stuff should not go in. If you're accusing my client of doing this bad thing on this particular day, bring the evidence regarding that. Why are you talking about old stuff? And the old stuff is the prior bad act. So fortunately, the judge ruled in our favor. But here's the thing. That's why I say lawyers like me and other great criminal defense attorneys, we're like surgeons who merely put a Band-Aid on top of the lesion to make it look a little better, temporarily feel a little better, but the underlying cancer that caused the lesion is still there. So we lawyers, the good ones, because there are many of us out here, I call them vampires. They just fly around in society and they look for somebody who's wounded and got some money, and they'll leap down and they'll force them to pay an arm or a leg for good representation. I'm not saying all lawyers are bad. Clearly, I'm not, because I'm one of them. I'm a lawyer, but I realize my limitations. We do what we can do. We're like the people who are firefighters. We go put out the fire, but we never deal with the arsonist causing the fire. If we deal with the arsonist causing the fire, then we don't have to go out and put out the fires. So my point is, it's great when you can have lawyers and folks who work within the legal system who recognize that, who recognize our limitations as lawyers, and they try to do much more. They don't want to just go by the rules of this classist, punitive system that people call the criminal justice system. These woke, these conscious, these progressive lawyers and legal workers, they want to just change the entire system. They don't want to reform it. They want to change it. That's why I got to give a big shout out to the Philadelphia Inquirer. A couple days ago, they published an article entitled, "When Public Defense Leaves the Courthouse and Enters the Classroom, Young People Are Empowered." Let me repeat that. When public defense leaves the courthouse and enters the classroom, young people are empowered. So what the Defender Association of Philadelphia is doing, they're saying it's not just enough to try to beat a case, because that doesn't do anything to change the system. We got to make sure that we alter and resist and revolt again and upend the entire system. Article goes on to read in the subtitle, more than 518 students across seven Philadelphia schools have participated in a junior defender program that has sparked interest in law and public service. That's a wonderful, wonderful thing. So in about 21 minutes, we're going to have Keisha Hudson. And Keisha Hudson is the chief defender of the Defender Association of Philadelphia. Joining Chief Defender Keisha Hudson is Guy Lang, the Director of Youth Programs and Community Outreach at the Defender Association of Philadelphia. So between Keisha and Guy talking about this system and talking about the problems of this system, we're going to eventually move toward a solution. So keep your dial locked. In about 20 minutes, we'll have Chief Defender Keisha Hudson, along with Guy Lang, Director of Youth Programs and Community Outreach. So get your pens out, get your pads out, because at the end of the show, this show, TV Courtroom, there will be an exam. In all seriousness, though, I want to talk about two things. The second thing will be in about 20 minutes. That's the what I call the classist punitive system and what can be done to upend the system and bring about a replacement system that will do better for poor people, for black people, for brown people, for yellow people, and for white people. In other words, for all people. That's the second item on today's two-item agenda. The first item deals with the recent, people are calling it the blue tsunami, the blue wave, the blue rush, whatever you want to call it. It's a great day. Here's the thing. As of what happened a few days ago, November 4 of 2025, we had a tremendous victory all across the country. We had New York City electing Mamdani. We had the Pennsylvania Supreme Court justices be retained for 10 more years. What does that mean? That means that the guy in the White House won't be able to come into Pennsylvania and get Congress to gerrymander so that Pennsylvania forevermore will always go to fascist and racist and misogynist, better known as maggots. So, because we have these three Democrats who will remain on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, we're moving toward true liberty and justice here in Pennsylvania. Big shout out. Remember what I said? We had a major victory with the New York City mayor, Mamdani. We had a major victory with the Pennsylvania Supreme Court keeping in office, we lawyers call it retention, Donahue and Doherty and Wecht. Number three, Democrat won in New Jersey to become the mayor of New Jersey. That's Mikey Sherrill. Don't stop there. Let's go to Virginia with Governor Spanberger. Don't stop there. Let's stay in Virginia, but go to the Virginia Lieutenant Governor, a sister who's a Muslim who made history as Lieutenant Governor in Virginia, sister by the name of Hashmi. But don't stop there. We're 5 for 5. Let's keep it moving. What about the California Prop 50 redistricting? That's critically important. Because if Texas is going to play foul games to make sure that Republicans stay in power, finally, the Democrats need to fight fire with fire. Democrats are too wimpish, too civil, too polite. And you can be civil when you're dealing with civil people. You can be polite when you're dealing with polite people. But if you're in the ring and the rules of the fight are you got to have padded gloves on and you can never hit below the belt, well, the Republicans come in there with brass knuckles and punching only below the belt. And the Democrats still come in with the padded gloves and hitting above the belt. And that's why they keep losing. But the governor of California said, "The hell with that. I'm going to play like you play." It's almost like in the hood, when somebody steps you the wrong way, you say, "Look, man, we can talk and debate and deal with this thing like gentlemen, or we can take it somewhere else. I don't want to take it anywhere else, but if you take me there, we're going there." That's what the governor of California said. And that's why California Prop 50 will counteract what Texas is trying to do. Wonderful, wonderful thing. And we're going to go far away from Texas to right here in Philly with the election of Philadelphia District Attorney Larry Krasner. So you talk about the New York City mayor, you talk about the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, you talk about the New Jersey governor, you talk about the Virginia governor, you talked about the Virginia lieutenant governor, you talk about California Prop 50, and you talk about Philly DA Krasner. But it's not just that. I don't have enough time to go through all of the stuff, but there were victories, and I'm going to say this slowly so you know I didn't make a mistake, in Mississippi. Democrats were able to win certain elections in Mississippi and kick out the Republicans. This is a wonderful day. And let me just stop right there by saying this. All those who are listening, and many of you who listen to me, are not just my friends, but you're my comrades. I'm a proud Pan-African socialist. That's my political ideology. And to be a Pan-African socialist, you have to be more than liberal. You have to be more than progressive. You have to be more than leftist. You have to be a real revolutionary where you want a real change in the entire system. You want to go from selfish capitalism to selfless socialism. So it's a revolutionary thing that's tied to our blackness as Africans. I have many of my comrades who are the same Pan African socialists. But here's the thing, they far too often fall prey to the situation where people let the perfect become the enemy of the good. Let me repeat that. Many of my revolutionary comrades are so ideologically pure in their politics that far too often they allow the perfect to become the enemy of the good. What do I mean? No disrespect to my comrades, but they're looking for a Malcolm X to be a mayor or to be a governor or to be a president. They're looking for an Asada Shakur to be a mayor, to be a governor, to be a president. But this is America. That's never going to happen. So if you are putting all your eggs in that basket, then you don't do anything to move our agenda forward. You're just out there talking. A would-be paper tiger, because you sound tough, the energy you're giving is contradicting what you're saying. So if you're really about change, and let me break down what I'm saying here. I know that Madam Vice President Kamala Harris was not Malcolm X. I know that Madam Vice President Kamala Harris was not Asada Shakur. I knew and know that Madam Vice President Kamala Harris is an establishment Democrat. I knew and I know that Madam Vice President Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party in general support the Zionist state of Israel against the innocent Palestinians more than they should. I know all that. But I still encourage people to vote for her. Why? Because there were two persons, legitimate candidates, on the ballot. One of them was going to become president. So if you know a monster is on the ballot, a fascist is on the ballot, a Nazi is on the ballot, a racist is on the ballot, a misogynist is on the ballot. If you know that, your question shouldn't be, hey, I heard that Madam Vice President Kamala Harris was a prosecutor. I heard that she was throwing some black people in jail. I heard that she was a part of the Democratic establishment. I get all that, but one of them was going to be president of the United States. We as revolutionaries, we as socialists, we as communists, we as leftists, we as progressive have to get off of our ideological high horse and be much more pragmatic. Do you know, and I mean no disrespect to the great Dr. Cornel West, but do you know that the Republicans financed his legal challenge to get on the ballot to run for president? Let me repeat that. Big, wealthy Republican law firms provided legal representation to Dr. Cornel West to be on the ballot to run for president. Do you think those racist Republican maggots like anything that Dr. Cornel West stands for? Of course not. But they knew that by putting him on the ballot, he would pull votes away, not from Orange Hitler, but from Madam Vice President Kamala Harris, because anybody who might be considering voting for Dr. Cornel West might possibly have been considering voting for Madam Vice President Kamala Harris. But nobody voting for Orange Hitler would have even considered Dr. Cornel West. So, what did Dr. Cornel West do? And I'm hoping he was just naive. I hope he wasn't part of a backdoor scheme to get Orange Hitler into the White House. His intentions might have been good, but you know the old saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And I got so many of my revolutionary comrades who were waving the Cornel West banner, saying we're going to support him and we're not going to support Madam Vice President Kamala Harris because she was a former prosecutor, because she was this, because of that. But damn it, I bet you would change your vote right now once you saw. And even though this is cable TV and I can drop the F-bomb if I want, and I can say shit if I want, and I just said it, I guess, and I'm going to say it one more time. But all those folks who decided to vote for Cornel West, who decided to vote for Jill Stein, who decided to write in candidates and allow Orange Hitler to win, I'm sure you regret that shit today, don't you? Because you look at where we are. And I encourage folks to engage in a debate with me about this because I'm serious about this. And that's why I said at the very beginning, and folks who know me in Philly, you know that I'm not feeling establishment Democrats. You know that I'm the angriest black man in America. But you also know that I'm pragmatic, that I realize what's going on and I play the best hand available. And I got to tell you, many of my revolutionary comrades, many of my black brothers, I'm not going to say black sisters, because black women, they always do the right thing when it comes to voting. They always do the right thing. But my black brothers, not all of them messed up, not most of them messed up. But did you know that 30% of black men under the age of 45 voted for Orange Hitler? Let me repeat that. 30% of black men under the age of 45 voted for Orange Hitler. Did they vote for him because they love Nazis? Did they vote for him because they love fascists? Did they vote for him because they love misogynists? No disrespect, but that misogyny thing played a role because I got to tell you, I've been doing this political thing for a very long time. And I host a show on WRD, and it's a predominantly black audience. And I used to write a column for the Tribune. And the stuff I was hearing from black men, it had a real chilling effect on me. I'm like, brothers, are you really saying that about Madam Vice President Kamala Harris? You got all this venom toward this black woman, but where's the rage against the white man who's a racist and a fascist and a misogynist? It's something wrong with us, and we need help. And I'm here to provide the help. When I say provide the help, I do, every time there's an election, I always do my angry black man endorsements. And I request that black people in particular, but everybody in general, adhere to my endorsements. You might say, well, who the hell do you think you are? Why should we listen to you? Well, there's a couple of reasons why you should listen to me, more than a couple, but I'll just give you a couple. One, everybody who knows me, even the people who don't like me, they know I'm committed to blackness. Whether you love me or hate me, you know I'm committed to the liberation of black people. That's one reason you should listen to me. The second reason you should listen to me is that I've been fortunate and lucky to go to Masterman, to go to Cheney, to go to Ohio State Law School, to teach at Temple, to work for WRD and the Tribune and all that kind of stuff. So I have access to information and resources the average black person doesn't. So I can go to places and get stuff and bring the information back. So whether you love me or hate me, you know that I know what I'm talking about. That's the second reason. But the third reason might be the strongest. Of all the individuals and groups and entities that issue endorsements, I'm the only one that has no ulterior motive. I don't want a job. I don't want a grant. I don't want a hookup. I don't want anything from an elected official except liberation for my people. So when I say you should listen to my recommendations when I'm endorsing people, like I said, the first one, as I broke down, you know that I fight for black people 24/7. So you know I'm not doing something that's counter to the interest of black people. You know I'm pro-black 24/7. You know that, whether you love me or hate me. Number two, you know that I've been able to have access to the type of education and resources that allows me to find out information that the average person with a 9 to 5 job and children and mounting debt, they don't have time to do that research. You know, I can do that. And as a lawyer, I was trained to research. And as a newspaper columnist, I know the haters are out there, so they're going to challenge me with everything. So I got to know what I'm talking about. So number two, you know I know what I'm talking about, even if you don't like me. And then number three, you know I have no hidden agenda, no ulterior motive. You know I don't want a job. You know I don't want a grant. You know I don't want a political hookup. So if I don't want those things for me, what do I want? I want liberation for my people. That's why I say you should listen to what I'm saying. So very quickly, in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to break it down, and then we're going to get to the stars of the show today to talk about the classist punitive system that many people incorrectly call the criminal justice system. So I posted on social media in what I call the Angry Black Man News, and people actually thought that I had a news publication called the Angry Black Man News, and so many people asked me about it. I decided to start publishing that sometime beginning in 2026. Since I no longer write for the Philadelphia Tribune, I'm going to publish a monthly column, a monthly newspaper, online newspaper called the Angry Black Man News. And I got to be quite candid. I no longer write for the Tribune because, and I love the Tribune. I consider it one of Philadelphia's correction. I consider it Philadelphia's greatest local newspaper, and I still subscribe to it. But we had a falling out, and the falling out is the Philadelphia Tribune told me shortly before the May primary 2025, I could no longer write my endorsements in my Freedom's Journal column. I had a weekly column in the Tribune. I also had a monthly column in the Tribune. And I've been writing for the Tribune for about 10, 11 years. And I was writing these endorsements, and things started acting weird at the Tribune. And I know we first bumped heads in 2017 when I endorsed Larry Krasner. And although I love the Tribune is the typical Black Democratic establishment newspaper. And that's not an insult, because Democrats have done more to push forward the agenda of Black people than Republicans have. And the Tribune is run by older people, so they're kind of locked into that mindset. Reasonable people can disagree without being disagreeable. So the Tribune, I guess they felt that my endorsements were too revolutionary. They thought my endorsements were too radical. They thought my endorsements were too progressive. But more than any of that, they knew my endorsements were truly effective. Larry Krasner is a prime example. The Tribune endorsed some guy who I don't even remember what his name was. But I came out and endorsed Larry Krasner. And when I wrote that article in the Philadelphia Tribune, it got mega traction. The Tribune was getting a lot of traction on social media, people buying newspapers, and people began to listen to me. And the Tribune has its own editorial board, and they do their own endorsements. And I don't know, maybe the Tribune thought that Michael Cord's endorsements in his columns carried more weight and more influence than the Tribune's editorial board. Let me marinate on that for a second. And therefore, the Tribune said, hey, Mike, you can't write any endorsements anymore. I said, I will not be censored. So I quit. It's almost like your father says something in the household that you don't like. And here I am, 19, 20 years old, and I don't like what my father is saying in the house. I still love you, Pop, but I got to go. And that's what I did with the Tribune. Still love it, still subscribe to it, but because they wouldn't allow me, after 10 years, wouldn't allow me to continue to write my endorsements, I had to leave. And when I kind of sort of jokingly pointed out on social media about this thing called the Angry Black Man News, so many people contacted me, hey, where can I get a copy? I said, well, maybe I should be serious about it. So in January of 2026, the first edition of the Angry Black Man News will be published, and more information will be provided. Meantime, folks, keep buying the Tribune, keep reading the Tribune. It's well-intentioned, it has its heart in the right place, and I truly believe it's helping Black people. Having said that, folks, I said enough about what I wanted to talk about. Now we get to what I described as the stars of the show. If you checked me out on social media today, you would have seen a flyer. And let me just read that as we get up on the screen. Keisha Hudson, Chief Defender of the Defender Association of Philadelphia, along with Guy Lang, the Director of Youth Programs and Community Outreach at the Defender Association of Philadelphia. And folks, I'm going to actually be quiet. I'm even going to go off camera because I want to focus on Keisha and on Guy. For those who just tuned in, at the top of the show, I pointed out a great article recently in the Philadelphia Inquirer. And here's the heading and the subheading. When public defense leaves the courthouse and enters the classroom, young people are empowered. More than 518 students across 7 Philadelphia schools have participated in a junior defender program that has sparked interest in law and public service. And I wanted to reach out to Keisha Hudson, Chief Defender, and Guy Lang, Director of Youth Programs and Community Outreach. And for the next 20, 23 minutes or so, you're just going to be hearing from them. I just want them to, for 20 minutes, I want them to talk to the listening audience about what they do and why they do what they do. So here are the ground rules. Keisha's going to speak first, spend about 30 seconds talking about her impressive background. Then Guy's going to talk about his background for about 30 seconds. And the two of them are just going to share with us what this thing is about, this article in the Tribune. When public defense leaves the courthouse and enters the classroom, young people are empowered. So without further ado, two of my favorite people in the system, Keisha and Guy. I'm listening, folks, but I'm off camera. Keisha, please start.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Michael, for inviting me on the show again, and for inviting me to talk about this really important topic with Guy. I am thrilled to be here. I'm the Chief Defender at the Defender Association of Philadelphia. We are the agency that represents both youth and adults who come into the system, who are arrested and charged with a criminal offense. We also represent children in the dependency and child welfare space. And if you cannot afford counsel, public defenders are the only constitutionally required, constitutionally mandated lawyers. If you cannot afford counsel, one will be appointed to you. And here in Philadelphia, that results in around 34,000 people that we represent roughly per year. I'll turn it over to you, Guy.
Thanks, Keisha, and thank you, Mike, for having me today. I really appreciate it. And I think something needs to be said also about Keisha that she left out. She is quickly becoming the angriest black woman in America. If you follow her on TikTok, you'll know what I mean, or Instagram, or even Facebook, you'll know what I mean. She has quickly taken the mantle of angriest black woman. As far as collective resistance and the work that I do at the Defender Association, I am the Director of Youth Partnerships and Community Outreach. And this program that we want to talk about today was born out of a need and also out of and knowledge that with me by you, Michael, in a course that I took of yours in undergrad many years ago, and it inspired a lot of the work that I do today. And so let's talk about the program.
That's
Let's talk a little about the Junior Defender Program. So Junior Defender Program is a program that was developed over a little more than 6 years ago, close to 6.5 years ago at the Defender Association of Philadelphia. What we realized was that our young people are being educated and prepared for, well, not all of our young people, but a combination of our young scholars in our public school systems are being prepared for college and some really amazing careers. But then there's also a group of young scholars who, based on a lot of different factors, it appears as though they are destined to come into contact with the criminal and justice system. And one thing that I feel personally, this is my personal take on it, is that as folks that do have some privilege, folks that do have the ability to share some knowledge, some wisdom, and pour into our young scholars. It would be irresponsible of us knowing that our young scholars are being prepared for prison, but they aren't being educated on ways to avoid prison, ways to avoid the school to prison pipeline, ways to dismantle it and clog it, and provide alternatives for it. So the Defender Association, under its leadership and its guidance and its continued leadership and guidance and the mission and vision of our organization, committed itself to educating these young people and pouring into them and giving them tools of collective resistance, so that they can change the spaces that they occupy, so that they can become safer, so that they can be educated in a space that's conducive to our young people who learn just a little bit differently than other young people may learn. The level of creativity that's in our programming, I think, is something that also moves us closer in proximity to our young people, so they're more receptive to the tools that we're providing them, and empowering them with these tools, so that they can make social change. Keisha?
Yeah, what I really love about the Junior Defender program is that we don't talk and teach our children about these systems. And Guy designed this program and was very thoughtful in terms of which schools we would approach with the program, in what communities, right? And we wanted to be in the communities where our clients live, and where their families live, but also the communities that these schools are in are communities where we are seeing a lot of our children come into the system. And we wanted to go into these schools so that they could understand, what the Defender Association is. But by the time they're the age that they are, when we're teaching them and talking with them, they've already learned so much about the system. Some of them having gone through it, some of them have family members who have gone through it, but they don't understand it, right? They know of it because people have been involved. They themselves might have been involved, or they know people who've been involved. They've been proximate to community violence, and have watched people go in and out of the system, but they don't understand how the system was designed, and it very much was designed to function this way. And going back to what Michael, you said about the criminal justice system, it in fact is not just. And we want children, particularly Black and Brown children, to understand this system and how the system pulls you in, and how you are entitled to advocacy, and what that advocacy needs to look like, but also that you have a voice in that system as someone who might be in it. How to advocate for yourself, how to work with your team, how to get yourself out of that system working with your team, how to get connected to resources, and the program teaches and gives kids the tools to be able to do this type of advocacy. I'd love for a Guy to talk about the communities that we're in, the schools that we've been working with in the past several years. As the article made clear, we've reached over 500 children. But Guy, did you want to pop back in and talk about the specific schools and communities where the program is in?
Absolutely. One of the things, and we can get right down to the nitty gritty. One of the things, or main factors that put us in the schools, the first set of schools anyway, because the program's been around for like 6 years now, and we initially launched this program as a pilot up at Sayre, because during a, a time when Sayre in Southwest Philadelphia was experiencing an uptick in gun violence and violence amongst young people, we decided that that's where we as defenders needed to be. That's where our young people needed the most support. That's where our young people were finding themselves coming into contact with the criminal injustice system, the youth injustice system. And so we decided that we would go to those schools that were impacted, and educate them on a number of things, and not just the criminal justice system and the rights that they have and collective resistance, but also things like de-escalation. We wanted to hand our young people over tools that they could use in order to walk away from conflict. And as Keisha mentioned, we've touched a lot of young people in the city of Philadelphia, more than 500 people across 7 different schools. And 2 of the schools I chose because they were schools that were dear to me and dear to my heart. And I am a community member in the city of Philadelphia, and I know what's needed in my community. And I know that based on the voices of the community and what I hear and what I observe. And my assessment was that yes, those is a couple schools uptown, and I'm from the uptown from Franklin, from Germantown, East Oak Lane, in those neighborhoods. And so we moved into Martin Luther King. We moved into Wagner Middle School, where those folks were really receptive and educating our young people. I dare to say that we are also educating those educators. Part of this program is training the trainers and ensuring that those folks who are tasked with the responsibility of educating our young people understand this curriculum. That this curriculum isn't one that's whitewashed. It's not going to be, or it would be totally unacceptable for this program to be taken in pieces. It's got to be taken as a whole. So our train the trainer that goes along with our junior defender program is something that is a requirement when we go into schools to ensure the fidelity of our programming. And now to the nitty gritty. One of the things or reasons that we, you see that article earlier in the week in the newspaper, and you'll see on social media our campaign to work on funding for this program is because programming like this requires funding. Our deserve to be paid for the work that they do. We have 39 interns over the past 3 years that have come into our office and learned so much. And if were to read that article, you'll see, one of the quotes from one of the young scholars of our junior defender summer internship, and it's very profound and it's very meaningful. And these are young people who express a desire to become advocates. And when you have a desire to become an advocate and you don't have a way or a path forward, or you don't know how to navigate the time and space between making that decision to become an advocate and becoming that advocate, we are that placeholder. We're those folks who are going to give you those tools. We're going to give you that direction. We're going to our junior defender program is broken into 3 different phases, and I'll give a little overview of those 3 phases. The junior defender program begins in the schools, where we teach young people between the 6th grade and the 12th grade about their rights. We also teach them about the system. We educate them on collective resistance and ways that they can leverage their resources to make change in the spaces that they occupy, whether it's school, whether it's their faith-based community, whether it's at home, whether it's the neighborhood that they live in. These are tools that we give them to ensure that they have the ability to make changes in these spaces. We also encourage them by continuing to support the projects that they develop and the ideas that they have, because our young people, they're the future. They're the biggest threat to Orange Hitler, right? And that being the case, we
For,
want to
for
make sure that they are.
yeah,
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
Yeah, no, not to interrupt you. I'd love for you to talk about like how long is the curriculum. So I wanted to make that clear, like how long we're working with the schools, with each of the schools that we're in.
Yes. Okay. So when we go into the 6th through 12th grades in the schools of Philadelphia and across the country where we're working to scale this program up, there's a 6-week program, 6 to 8 weeks, depending on the grade level and the academic level that these young folks are on, and the appropriateness of the material. Whether we have to break it down into a few more segments. So 6 to 8 weeks inside the school setting where we educate these young people. We go into the school once a week. And we have, in most schools, like 2 cohorts. We run two classes of young folks, and each week we cover a couple different topics. One of the topics is always going to be on the school to prison pipeline. The other topic is always going to be around collective resistance. And then we move. It's a 10-week internship where our young people come into the office Monday through Thursday, and we educate them on similar things, but we take a much deeper dive. We connect our young scholars and interns with attorneys in the office, with social service advocates, with our DEA. Uh, uh, court watching prior to going actually being connected with an attorney and actually navigating those spaces with that attorney. They develop And this is as far as our junior defenders in school and our junior defender summer interns. They all develop an initiative around collective resistance and around some space or some area that they want to see a change in, and they want to be those change agents. And then finally, that third phase, we work with our junior defender peer educators, or once they complete our summer internship, they're then designated as junior defender peer educators, and they go back out into that community because we want to create a perpetual support system for our young people. So once we educate these summer interns, they're now designated with the title of Junior Defender Peer Educator, and they follow us into schools and they provide information to community members and folks that are near and dear to them that require, some kind of support or resources around criminal injustice.
I got to tell you both. I just want to. We're still going to continue with this conversation, but I'm just so impressed with you, Guy, and you, Keisha. You both seem like radio and TV professionals in terms of how smooth you are with your transitions and going back and forth. So I wanted to commend you for that. I'm so impressed with the substance of what you're talking about. I want to make sure that before we wrap this up in about 10 minutes, either you, Keisha, or you, Guy, folks who are listening now, folks who want to support you, what can they do? What should they do to support your initiative? Keisha, you'll take that first, and then we'll go to Guy.
Yeah, so we actually were able to scale this program up with a federal grant. And that federal grant was through the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention in Washington, D.C. And it was a significant grant. I don't have the total number here, but it was around $400,000 over 3 years to run the Junior Defender program in these schools and be able to scale up. Initially, we started with 2 schools, then went to 4, and now are in other spaces. And we wanted to actually, in the perfect world, expand to every school in Philadelphia. But bring that curriculum and that level of education and that level of teaching, how to do your own advocacy and how to work with each other to create solutions to the issues that impact you. And I'll let Guy talk about a couple of the projects because they're brilliant, right? Our kids are brilliant. We don't suggest the projects to them. We don't tell them, that this is something they have to do. They come up with the ideas themselves. Unfortunately, that grant ended at the end of September. So we are, Guy pivoted as he always does. And so we are actually moving the curriculum into an online model, but that is not as effective as in person and being, in these spaces and then having the conversations and the free flowing conversations and ideas that come out of that. So until we get further funding to kind of return in person, we're moving the program in an online module. Our summer program, I would love to be able to continue, right? That was about $60,000 in cost for the summer because we pay these interns. They're young college kids. It's an incredibly diverse group. They're passionate. Many of them they're not even thinking about law school until they come through the program, and then their passion is sparked, whether that's a social worker, investigator, paralegal, or ultimately an attorney. So we're looking for funding for summer 2026 to be able to at least continue our junior defender summer intern program. But I'm happy to have Guy, I think, talking about one or two of the projects that have been really powerful. These kids are brilliant. They have wonderful, fantastic ideas. They just need folks to listen to them and their educators. I want to make sure before we end to thank the educators and the principals of the schools and the teachers who work with us collaboratively to come into this space, and also who have.
And it appears that we might have lost Keisha. I think we lost Keisha. There apparently was a bad connection. I don't know if it was on our end or her end, but we have a great engineer. We have a great producer in the person of Roland. So we're going to see if we can get Keisha back on because she was really enlightening us. I think we still have Guy. Guy, are you still with us?
I am. I'm still here. Yes.
Okay. Oh, we do have Keisha. Keisha, we lost you for a couple seconds and you were about to turn it over to Guy. But before we do that, let me deal with the elephant in the room because there are people who are watching this and they're like, here we go with those bleeding heart liberals. They're talking about the criminal and justice system. They're talking about this classist, punitive system. These are bad kids. They're juvenile delinquents. That's why we have laws like DFJ and laws like certification. Keisha, you first. push back on that.
I said this before city council members when I'm testifying on these issues, and I was just before city council last week testifying about how we put a GPS monitors on around 1,800 kids in Philadelphia per year, and I compared those GPS monitors to slave shackles. That's what they look like to me, in the ways that they're overutilized on our kids, the way they monitor our kids, and there's money at the end of this. One of the people who came and testified at the hearing is the vendor. And this vendor is not even a Philadelphia company that we have contracted with. The city of Philadelphia is contracted with to spend $1.3 million a year on GPS monitoring for our kids. And I compared that to my entire budget allocation that I got out of the entire budget season last year was 1.5 million. So you're giving the public defense system, which is already grossly underfunded, 1.5 million. But at the same time, we're contracting with outside of Philadelphia to spend 1.3 to put monitors on our youth. So that was a powerful hearing. That was a powerful space. But every time I'm before city council, I say this, that there are no bad children. That's not a concept I believe in. There are no bad children. We fail our children. Our systems fail our children. And you could say, okay, the family system failed them. It's a lot more complicated. In the city of Philadelphia, we are the number one in the country, city in the country that separates Black and brown children from their parents. We are number one in the country. So we called it the womb to prison pipeline, right? We have the school to prison. We call it the womb to prison. And it's that family surveillance and over surveillance, the involvement of systems and families, children being removed not because of abuse, but for neglect, which is really poverty. And then we look at how those children are then going from the dependency system into the delinquency system into the adult system, and we're shocked about how they got to these systems. The community system fails them. These are communities where our kids live that were redlined in the 30s, where they were systematically disinvested in, where people couldn't get homes, they couldn't get businesses, they couldn't build any sort of generational wealth. These are the places in Philadelphia where good luck finding a tree or green spaces, or making sure homes are healthy and we have safe, healthy spaces for our kids. The public health system has failed our children. The education systems have failed our children. And it's a combination of all of those systems that then come into play, that bring our youth into the system. I've always said that public defense is the civil rights movement of our time, and mass incarceration is the civil rights movement of our time, because it feels like a designed post-slavery system, which looks very different, but is the way that is designed to control and devastate Black and brown bodies and communities.
Keisha, I thought I was throwing you a curveball, but you hit it out of the park. I guess Guy was absolutely correct when he said, just like I'm the angriest Black man in America, you apparently are the angriest Black woman. I love how you broke that down. Folks are running out of time. We got about 5 minutes left, so let's do this. This is the TV courtroom show, and like many courtroom proceedings, there's a chance for a closing argument. Guy, we're going to give you 2 minutes for a closing argument, and then we're going to wrap it up with Keisha. Guy, your 2 minutes starts now.
Okay, thank you. First, I'd like to say that for a living, I am not a community engagement specialist. I'm a lover of Black people for a living. Secondly, I want to say that Keisha hit the nail right on the head. And one thing that I like to talk about when I'm leading discussions or workshops or presentations is the criminalization without contextualization. And Keisha spoke truth to that contextualization. And that's something that we should always be mindful of when we talk about our young scholars and folks who call us bleeding hearts, because of the work that we do and the way we do it, and we do it intentionally and we do it unapologetically. And Keisha also talked a little bit about, us as a city and how we engage our young people. This is my understanding, the poorest big city in the country. That being the case, all of those things attribute to what we call delinquency in our children. And what we're doing to our young people is these are not young criminals. These are young people engaging in youthful acts that are criminalized. So we need to ensure that that contextualization is always there when we talk about our young people. And just to close it out, I would just like to, drop a plea for funding. If you have a funding stream or a funding source, and you believe that that's something that you are able to share with the defenders, not even the Defender Association, because this money passes through directly to our young people. Keisha spoke about $50,000, $60,000 to, that's the cost to drive this summer internship. That's what we pay our young people. Our staff are volunteers, and these are people who work on these types of projects because it gives them a warm, fuzzy feeling inside. And with that said, I just want to say, power to the people, stay dangerous, stay sturdy, and let's work to continue to support these young people because they are going to be the biggest threat to the establishment. Going forward. So thank you for your time, Mike. Thanks for having me. And thank you to our city of Philadelphia for allowing the Defender Association to serve.
I got
Uh,
to tell you, guys,
I,
that was a
I,
great 2 minutes. And the final 2 minutes, Keisha, are yours.
I can't believe I have to follow Guy. But what I would say, as I've said on every show, Michael, is that public defense is really important. We have to fund public defense. We need resources in this organization because we, unfortunately, as I said before, when all of those systems fail, people unfortunately end up with us, and what they end up with, it's great representation and shouting out all of the people who work at the Defender Association of Philadelphia. I have the best colleagues, the most passionate colleagues. But I would like to get to a space where my attorneys who represent our youth clients aren't walking into court knowing that they have dozens of other youth clients that they have to also represent. So I'm working to increase staffing. I'm working to increase social services staffing. Last year, we represented 14 in the delinquency system, and we have 10 lawyers and 5 social workers who represented those 1,400 children. The math is deplorable, right? So public justice and public defense and the criminal legal system, the juvenile justice system space, these are community issues, and we don't represent those people. We represent your mom, your dad, your neighbor, as they're going through a really horrible system that was designed to bring them in, keep them entrenched, and then spit them back out into those communities without being made whole. So fund public defense.
Great stuff. Closing arguments by both of you were wonderful. If folks want more information, contact the Defender Association of Philadelphia. That number, 215-568-3190. That's 215-568-3190. We want to thank Keisha. We want to thank Guy. I hope that we can get you back on not only my TV courtroom show, but my radio courtroom show. Unfortunately, we run out of time. Thank you both. I'm
Thank you.
thoroughly impressed, but I knew you both are going to do exactly what you did. Keisha Hudson and Guy Lang, thank you very much. And I mean what I just said. I'm going to be pestering you to come back, not only on TV Courtroom, but on the radio courtroom.
I'll be
Thank
there.
you.
We'll be
I
there.
know you will. And Guy, I know you definitely will be. Thank you both. Have a wonderful weekend. Once again, folks, for more information, call the Defender Association in Philadelphia. That number is 215-568-3190. 215-568-3190. In my final 1 minute, I wanted to talk more about elections, what happened this past Tuesday, and what needs to happen in the future. But we run out of time. Don't worry about it. There's 2 ways you can get more information. As I just told Keisha, as I just told Guy, I do my radio courtroom show. So tune in tomorrow, Saturday. That's Saturday, November 8th, 2025, every Saturday from 1 o'clock p.m. until 3 o'clock p.m. Once again, Radio Courtroom, WURD 96.1 FM. Radio Courtroom, WURD 96.1 FM. For more information, go to the website, which is WURDradio.com. WURDradio.com. That's the first way you can hear more about my position on what happened on Tuesday's election day and what needs to happen going forward. The second way you can get more information, this is critically important, attend the Molefe Kete Asante Institute. Molefe Kete Asante Institute, located at 5535 Germantown Avenue. We all know the great Dr. Molefe Kete Asante, the godfather, the brains, the force behind Afrocentricity in America. He has his institute at 5535 Germantown Avenue. And this Sunday, that's November 9, this Sunday, November 9 at 4 p.m., I'll be speaking about the importance of what happened on Tuesday's election day, but the even greater importance of what needs to happen going forward. This Sunday, November 9, 4 p.m., the Molefe Kete Asate Institute at 5535 Germantown Avenue. I'll end this show, like I end every show, by saying two things. Great job, our producer extraordinaire, Roland. And the final thing, think black. I'm out.